There's a lot in the queue which are projects that are slow moving, others that are faster moving. They're trying to get these faster moving projects in the grid, connected to the grid faster, sometimes by grouping them by geographic area. But there's a lot that wants to connect and only so many people around to study it.
Hello from the Nasdaq MarketSite. I'm Jarrett Banks, editor-at-large of CorpGov. Joining me is a repeat guest, Jeff Jakubiak, a partner of energy regulation at Vinson Elkins. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into it. How are rising power demands from data centers affecting local grids and energy markets?
It's affecting the grids in a massive way. Really, two things are affecting it. One, demand for energy itself is growing by leaps and bounds from data centers. By some predictions, which seem to change every week and go up, we need 30 new nuclear power units by 2030, or the equivalent. In addition, there's going to need to be transmission lines and distribution lines to get the power from the grid to the data centers. This massive infrastructure build that's going to be coming in the next decade or so hasn't been seen since the 50s.
Okay, now we talked about this before, but since then I've just seen innumerable stories about this topic. How are regulators preparing themselves for this?
Regulators aren't quite sure what to do. The best they're doing right now is trying to remove any impediments that they see in the regulatory environment to getting the infrastructure built. One of that is clearing out what's called the interconnection queue, which is the request line of everybody that wants to connect to the grid. There's a lot in the queue which are projects that are slow moving, others that are faster moving. They're trying to get these faster moving projects in the grid, connected to the grid faster, sometimes by grouping them by geographic area. But there's a lot that wants to connect and only so many people around to study it.
Okay, what regions are seeing most of these data centers and why?
Frankly, they're everywhere in the United States. There's a lot of growth in Virginia, known as the IT corridor, a lot in Texas, but I'm seeing data centers being contemplated and built in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Utah, in New Mexico. Really, where anybody can find the energy resources to power the grid, they're looking to build a data center.
Okay. Now, is this mostly driven by AI and cloud computing? What are the drivers?
That's a large part of it. That's where we're seeing the real uptick in these massive projections of the growth of energy demand for the grid generally. There's natural growth, industry, consumers, whatnot, but it's the AI, the data centers, both on the language learning side as well as the, what I'll call the output side of the data centers, as well as the storage that's driving this uptick.
Okay, and how are these data centers responding to increasing scrutiny?
They're trying to site wherever they can, get any resources they can. A lot of them are trying to be more green and are siting with, in coordination with nuclear power plants, or in some cases looking to repower nuclear power plants. A lot are also putting in wind facilities, solar facilities paired with batteries. The cost of batteries have come down so much in recent years that you can pair them with solar facilities, pair them with wind facilities to create a very stable supply chain to the data center, something we hadn't seen maybe 5 years ago.
All right. What types of roadblocks are developers seeing?
The roadblock is just the time to build. Not only does it take a while to study whether the data centers and the generating facilities can be connected to the grid and maintain grid stability, but there's an issue of just getting the infrastructure in place. A lot of these equipment orders are long lead time, 3, 4, 5 years. Data centers want to be up in 18 months. The reality is if they can find a generating facility or find supply on the grid sufficient to supply them in 18 months, they will take it.
All right. How are state and federal policymakers balancing economic growth and grid reliability?
Very carefully is the long and short answer of it. We have to maintain grid reliability. The grid is stable, it has to be stable, it has to remain stable. And that means when new generation or new massive load enters the grid, studies have to be undertaken in a very careful manner to make sure that it doesn't upset the grid. The regulators are making sure that these studies continue, that connections to the grid are only made if the grid reliability continues. It's a long process, but by the same token, as I mentioned, they're trying to speed it up. They're trying to get the more commercially viable projects first to the grid. The ones that are, what they say, first to completion are going to get to the grid first. Or at least that's the reality that the regulators are trying to create so that things can get connected. But reliability is paramount, and nobody's going to sacrifice that to get things just connected.
Okay. Who's most affected by the rise of hyper-scale data centers?
Everybody's affected. I mean, the fact is, it's a consumer-oriented product. Everybody is benefiting it. Anybody who makes a Google search, for example, is going to be using AI, whether they know it or not. People are going to see electricity demand increase. They're going to see building of infrastructure in their communities. That brings tax revenue. It is good all around. The grid needs to be hardened. The fact of the matter is the United States transmission grid is aging. It needed to be upgraded. It needed to be replaced. And the data centers are bringing about probably faster than it otherwise would, but it's a good thing to upgrade the infrastructure altogether.
All right, and then turning to your topic here, are we going to see more legal disputes from all of this?
Of course, whenever people build things, whenever people want to build things, there are going to be legal disputes. One of the things that we do that actually I enjoy most of all is helping to navigate the regulatory environment. A lot of the people I'm working with come to this field knowing how to build data centers, knowing how to connect data centers. They don't understand the regulatory environment in which they have to live to get the power to the data centers. It's becoming a bit of a political issue. There are debates as to who really should be getting the rights to the power, which by its nature is limited, and that's where we can help navigate the waters.
Okay, last question. How are you helping clients navigate those waters, these complex regulatory environments?
It's helping primarily to unpack what the regulatory environment is and what's involved. How you get things built, how you get things built quickly. I'll give you a prime example. 5 years ago, nobody would have ever thought building a data center that isn't connected to the electric grid. Everybody wants the electric grid as a backup in case some kind of power source that you have dedicated to the data center goes down. The reality is the timeline to connecting to the grid now is 4, 5, even more years. We're now seeing data centers being connected just to a power source, off grid, completely islanded, as we call it. And then they will connect to the grid later. Even 18 months ago, this was a crazy concept, but the reality is it's the only way data centers in many parts of the country are going to get connected in the 18 months, which is the timeline that they see that they need from their commercial standpoint. So we're helping these companies navigate how do you build the power plants to create as much reliable power in a short time frame, and then how do you connect to the grid most quickly in order to get that backup and be able to hedge against energy prices.
All right, we'll leave it there. My thanks to Jeff Jakubiak, a partner of energy regulation at Vinson Elkins. I'm Jarrett Banks, signing off from the Nasdaq MarketSite.